Hello, and welcome again. Now let's get started with number 3, which is, if I can find it on my document. Here it is. The Grim Adventures of Billy Mandy's Halloween Special, Billy Mandy's Jacked Up Halloween. For those of you who may or may not know, The Grim Adventures of Billy Mandy is one of the most obscure Cartoon Network shows. Mostly because of its horror elements, if you will. Well, I mean, let's face it, it's two little kids befriending the Grim Reaper. But in this Halloween special, it is pretty good, and I'll have to say, and I'll explain why in a moment. And it's Halloween night in the city of Ennsville, and while Billy, Mandy, and Grim are trick-or-treating, Irwin is constantly going back and forth, changing costumes, because Mandy keeps telling him, I'm going to change into something scary, and every time he shows up, his costumes get lamer and lamer. And later on in the special, after her pranking a crotchety old lady who's too stingy to get about candy on Halloween, Grim tells Billy and Mandy a story about Jack-o'-lantern, and basically how he became to be and why we pull pranks on one another on Halloween. It turns out Jack was a little bit of what's the right word to use? I'll say it anyway. He was kind of a prick, in a way. And his pranks weren't exactly all that funny. Ruining a guy's soup by nearly unscrewing off the lid of a salt shaker, thus creating more salt than needed. I mean, that's just the tip of the iceberg. On the day of his death, after the villagers have had enough and sent a knight to get rid of them, Grim comes into the scene and tries to take Jack away. But of course, he doesn't want to go. So instead, Jack tricks Grim and giving him immortality, so he can play pranks for all eternity. Now, the Grim Reaper is an entity of his word, but there's one thing you do not want to do, and that is double-cross death. And so Grim compromises. Jack can live forever, except he'll be missing one trait of his, namely his head. And thus, Jack basically, after acquiring a pumpkin, Jack became known as the Pumpkinhead Prankster. Right, pretty much that's why we play pranks on Halloween. Now, when Billy and Mandy decided to split up, Billy, he of course is dressed up as the Grim Reaper and has Grim's scythe. And after being warned for what seems like the millionth time, and about how dangerous Grim's scythe can be, Billy ignores it and just runs off. Until, coincidentally, he comes across a house that seems untouched by time. And this is where we come across Jack. Oh, and by the way, Jack is voiced by Wade Knight. For those of you who don't quite recognize him, he's Newman on Seinfeld, and he was the guy who basically caused the outbreak in Jurassic Park. Wade Knight he's acted a couple of other characters. There's like Mr. Blett from Cat Scratch, another obscure Nickelodeon show that not a lot of people talk about. And there's one other character that I'll explain later. Realizing that Billy has the scythe of the Grim Reaper, he tries to take it from the boy. And he does this by tickling him, and with a feather that plucks off of his hat. After he acquires the scythe, Jack, Nick, and Billy head towards a pumpkin patch, where Jack attempts to summon and basically the spirits of the underworld to possess his pumpkins and create wide amounts of destruction. And throughout all of this, as Jack feels like he's forgetting something, and until he realizes, oh yeah, that's right, I have to repay a death for what he did. And he does this by basically telling Grim, you cut off my head, I'm going to cut off yours. And I love how they kind of explain Grim's scythe a bit, because Billy, he interferes by saying, that's ridiculous. I just can't cut off Grim's head. His head comes off and off all the time. Watch. Until Jack brings up a very interesting bit of trivia about the scythe. Any head cut off by the Reaper's scythe remains decapitated forever. And while Jack is preparing to basically lop off Grim's skull, well, Billy's cowering while Mandy comes up with a plan to prank the prankster. And the pranks that she comes up with are pretty inventive, like pie catapults, electric eels in the pond, hot sauce in the milk carton. By the way, they've done that gimmick before. Or dynamite in a beehive. Stuff like that. And while she's doing this, she has Billy trying to distract Jack by mooning him. Okay, and surprisingly that works. When Jack finally gets back his focus, and for some other reason he knows for a fact that Mandy's been setting up all these traps for him to set off. When he says that he can't be scared by mere pranks, we see something incredibly surprising. A knight shows up out of nowhere, or telling Jack, asking Jack if he's afraid of him now. And surprisingly, Jack's afraid. Why, you may ask? Well, because this knight is similar to the one and they put the axe in his back like a long time ago. And unfortunately enough, this is Erwin, who accidentally trips and falls on a whoopee cushion. And once he sets off, because when Billy starts laughing, of course, why wouldn't anybody laugh after something like that? But sets off a chain reaction. And by the way, the laughing in scene and it follows takes up a good 2.5 minutes, and I have no problems with it. Other than the fact that the first time I actually saw this special, when it came to that part, I laughed like crazy. I couldn't stop. Not even when this giant pumpkin explodes as it makes a fart sound, as it gets splashed on Billy. But Jack's defeated and by his own trick. Grim takes the feather there, tickles Jack until he laughs himself so much he's sucked back with the other spirits. And we don't see Jack again until the very end. And which it's kind of a surprise, not that much of a surprise on where he is. Yeah, basically he's in hell. And he's not suffering at all. He's basically just tormenting the demons. And for all eternity now. That being said, let's move on to number 2, which is the episode let me start that again. From Danny Phantom, it's the episode Fright Night. This is a Halloween special of a show that would become a Halloween special altogether because it ties in with ghosts. And Danny Phantom's kind of a good show, from what I can remember. Basically, a teenager named Danny Phantom gains the ability to change from a normal human to somewhat of a half-ghost superhero, if you will. And he's dealt with a lot of different enemies in the past, such as the Lunch Lady Ghost, the Box Ghost, Skulker, the Ghost Dog, Vlad Plasmius, even horrifyingly intimidating ghosts like Dan Phantom, which is his evil alter ego. Kind of. Pariah Dark, whom is the king of ghosts, and even our title character, Fright Night. Now on to the episode itself. It's Halloween in Amity City. Yeah. And since it's Halloween, it's basically a time where you'd think the ghosts of the ghost zone would be free to roam around. No, even on Halloween, they're stuck in the ghost zone. Pooh. Basically, the plot of the episode is that Danny accidentally releases a ghostly knight who carries a sword that can send and whomever he slashes with it to a different dimensional plane, or they go face to face with their worst nightmares. And we learn, along with Danny and Tucker, that the only way that Fright Night can be defeated is to have him embed his sword inside of a pumpkin. I just realized something. A ghostly knight that has a sword that can send you to meet your worst fears can only be defeated with a pumpkin. This is almost a crossover parody between Nightmare on Elm Street and The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. Oh, in a way. And the Fright Night does make a few appearances after this, especially in the special Reign of Terror, where we meet Pariah Dark. And apparently the Fright Night is the Ghost King's right-hand man. Who knew? Anyway, before we move on to number 1, and let's recap my other entries that I've had so far. Number 13, The Headless Cabby. Number 12, Nightmare in Retroville. Number 11, Treehouse of Horror. Number 10, Spooky. Number 9, Halloween. Number 8, Halloween is Grinch Night. Number 7, Holiday Toots Childhood Scare Videos. Number 6, the top 13 animated monsters. Number 5, Scary Godparents. Number 4, Ed and Eddie's Halloween Boo Ha Ha. Number 3, Billy and Mandy's Jacked Up Halloween. And number 2, Fright Night. And for number 1, and it's Scooby-Doo and the Goblin King. Yeah, surprising, isn't it? I put a Scooby-Doo movie is number 1 of a Halloween special list. But yeah, Scooby-Doo all together is almost like a Halloween special too, kind of like Danny Phantom. Let me explain. Since 2008, when this movie originally aired on Cartoon Network, it's played every October. It was good for the first few times. Now it's kind of annoying. And it's another straight to video Scooby-Doo movie. What happened into animated Scooby-Doo films hitting theaters before are going to straight to DVD? Like Scooby-Doo and Zombie Island, Scooby-Doo and the Alien Invaders, Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost. But I digress. It's Halloween night, and Shaggy and Scooby have to stop an evil magician who plans to use the powers of the Goblin King's scepter to rule Halloween and take over the world. Well, and that's the plot. And basically, I love the different character designs for the Halloween world. It's almost like Nightmare Before Christmas is Halloween Town. Only the way. And the voice over work is really good. And mostly because it features the talented voices of the following. And Wallace Shawn as a magic shopkeeper, Wayne Knight, who's the magician Krusty, Jay Leno, who voices a form of jack-o'-lantern, Jim Belushi as one of the goblins, and of course, voicing the Goblin King himself, is none other than Tim Curry. And as I've said before, if I think I can hear his voice coming from a character, I start nerding out. Mostly because I don't know why. If I hear his voice in animation, and something in my brain goes, "Oh my God, I can't believe he's doing this," but in a good way. Also, on a side note, in the bar scene, yeah, there's a bar scene. We actually see past Scooby-Doo villains, like a mummy, a creeper, or a vampire, witches, that kind of stuff. I don't know. Well, but I will say this, the Goblin King's scepter itself is actually pretty interesting. I mean, if a normal person holds the scepter, or they turn into a goblin themselves. And there is one problem I have with the movie, is that it foreshadows too much of one scene, and that is when the shopkeep was Shaggy and Scooby what would happen if they don't stop Krutsky, and that he'll turn Velma, Daphne, and Freddy into monsters. Velma gets turned into a werewolf, Daphne gets turned into a witch, Freddy becomes a vampire. And that's it for my top 13 Halloween specials. But before I leave off on this video, I want to make an honorable mention. And this one is going to surprise a lot of people. Mostly because most of us have never even heard of this. And for my honorable mention, it is Grizzly Tales for Gruesome Kids. If you don't know what this is, I'll explain. It's an old TV series that told a cautionary tale in each episode, much like the Grimm Brothers' original fairy tales. I don't really know that much about the series, but from what I've seen on YouTube, I have to say it definitely fits a Halloween motif. Like the Goosebumps series, it started out as a collection of novels that were supposed to scare kids into behaving themselves as well as to teach moral lessons. And keep in mind, this was thought up by the British. So the lessons might be a little bit more severe than we're used to, at least now. And each episode pretty much starts the same way. We see a boy walking towards a movie cinema where they show each story. The show is hosted and narrated by a scary old guy. And by the way, the first segment and of each episode is animated with stop motion. And I would like to add that if each show of the show's 8 separate seasons were combined into a full-length movie, consisting of one season in particular, these would probably be a kids' version of Stephen King's Creepshow trilogy. And by that I mean, and put it this way, the stories that they tell in the series are definitely frightening. I mean, there's a barber who cuts out the bad part of kids' tongues. There's sort of a boogeyman that turns kids into pot stuff because they don't want to eat what's on their plate. there's a guy who put his kid had to suck their thumbs in the pies. There's a demon that steals a child's youth, because her father is so obsessed with becoming famous. And a bunch of other stories. And the one story that sticks out well in my mind and is the story entitled, I forget what it was, but it had something to do with the old wife's, like, that bit of advice you get for your mother. You keep making that face, it'll stick that way. Well, the guy who's making these weird faces ends up not making any faces anymore because of something to do with spiders. And that's it for my top 13 in Halloween specials. I hope you all enjoyed this video. And this is only part 1 of my Halloween special. Whole series. And keep in mind, until Halloween, I'll be making more. And next time, I'll be covering a topic I am pretty familiar with right now. So until then, this is Demon0981, and signing out. Later.